Season 1. After a solid year of internal strife between ABC and the producers, NYPD Blue debuted on September 21, 1993 on most ABC affiliates. Around a fourth of them refused to air the show due to the partial nudity and adult language. A few notes at the start. David Milch's writing is all over the show. Even if he isn't the credited writer on an episode, Milch was known for tossing out scripts and making up new dialogue on the set. Sipowitz was famously his favorite character to write for. When Milch finally left the show, the other writers questioned how they were going to write Sipowitz dialogue, a mixture of crude yet clever insults and threats, since this was always his responsibility. NYPD Blue has its own language, and as the series goes on, the cop talk becomes increasingly dense. One notable term is the way cops refer to their work as the job. It's not just some place you go every day for a paycheck. It's the job. There is no such thing as the 15th Precinct. It's like a 555 area code. The building exterior you see on the show is an actual precinct house with the numbers on the outside changed. Blue stayed on the air for so long that this building was actually demolished by the city years before the series was canceled. You'll notice that the Netflix Marvel shows have characters interacting with a 15th Precinct, which is possibly an NYPD Blue homage. The music is cheesy. Okay, that's not entirely fair. Often the music is just fine. In fact, the rhythm-heavy opening, which mimics the sound of an approaching subway car and is influenced by the drum fill in Phil Collins' In the Air Tonight, is a genuine classic. But NYPD Blue isn't scored the way most serious dramas are scored today, with music that only makes an occasional, unobtrusive entrance in the show. The music in Blue often wants to sell everything, and it can be annoying. Almost every light-hearted moment of the show is accompanied by wacky notes that don't match the overall tone of the series. There's also the dreadful funky button one of the composers had on his synthesizer, which was overused during many of the street montage scenes. The worst use of music on the show, however, has to be the female voice singing over the warmed-over 80s saxophone music during the pilot's first sex scene. Blue has a ridiculous amount of cast turnover, and the only actor to appear in every episode of the series is Dennis Franz. The first season of the series is the only one to feature a season-long story arc. In fact, the events of the first episode go on to influence the early episodes of the second season. A decision made by Detective Kelly's girlfriend in the pilot later leads to Kelly being forced off the job at the beginning of the second season. The regular cast of the first season, i.e., those who receive a credit in the opening sequence, include David Caruso as Detective John Kelly. Where to begin on this one? Caruso, in a nutshell, had an acrimonious relationship with the producers, and famously announced he'd be leaving the show after the first season to pursue his movie career. After starring in 2 flops and becoming a regular punching bag for comedians, Caruso attempted a TV comeback in 1997. Nothing really stuck until he landed the lead on CSI Miami, where he became another pop culture punchline for his earnest delivery of a series of wretched puns during the show's openings. CSI Miami was a monster hit for years, however. The casting of Caruso was always controversial, behind the scenes. Series co-creator David Milch auditioned Caruso early on to play John Kelly, the 30-ish partner of Andy Sipowitz, his one-time mentor who has become a self-destructive addict. Milch reports in his True Blue book that he didn't care for Caruso's audition. He felt Caruso lacked the empathy that's an inherent part of Detective Kelly's character. While auditioning with someone reading Sipowitz's part, Caruso kept talking over the end of Sipowitz's lines, indicating that he knew what Sipowitz was going to say and had already discounted it. Milch thought it was an interesting way to go, but it didn't ring true for the character. Stephen Bochco, years later, gave a different side of the story. He indicates that casting Caruso was his call. After someone mentioned Caruso's name to him, Bochco knew he had to play Kelly. Caruso played an Irish gang leader years earlier on Hill Street Blues, and impressed Bochco even back then. Milch begged Bochco not to cast Caruso, indicating that, as a crazy person, he knew crazy when he saw it, and could tell Caruso was nuts. David Caruso did seem fated to play the part. Bochco originally wanted Jimmy Smits, who was unavailable. How Smits would have played the very Irish Detective Kelly isn't clear. Various casting agents kept mentioning Caruso for the part, and even NYPD Blue's police consultant suggested Caruso play the role after seeing him portray a cop in the film Mad Dog and Glory. From Bill Clark's perspective, David Caruso was pure cop. Clark apparently wasn't much of a Caruso fan after meeting him, though. He caught Caruso in a lie during their very first conversation, as detailed in True Blue. John Kelly character notes. Caruso's bit about talking over another actor before he can finish his lines, you can see it on display throughout the season, although he never does it to Sipowitz, a rule Milch surely enforced. It works as a legitimate character trait. John Kelly is a bit cocky. He's been a cop for a while, and from his perspective, he knows whatever story you're going to give him before you're even finished with it. John Kelly's father was a cop who was murdered when he was a boy. The exact age is a little unclear. The show gives one age, but Milch remembers a different one in True Blue. The sense of loss stays with Kelly into adulthood, leading him to become overprotective and possessive toward those closest to him. This is a major factor in his divorce, and influences the jealous way he monitors his new girlfriend after he suspects she's lying to him. The father-son dynamic between Kelly and Sipowitz didn't feel natural for Caruso, and Milch speculates it's because Caruso had a strained relationship with his own father. Caruso simply couldn't grasp why Detective Kelly would be so patient with his hot-headed, self-destructive partner. Dennis Franz as Andy Sipowitz. Franz is the only actor to appear in every episode of the show over the course of the 12 seasons, and is inarguably the star of the series. Much of the friction in Blue's first year revolved around Caruso's feeling that Franz was receiving better material from the writers. It's hard to disagree. Franz is playing a middle-aged detective who's descended so deeply into alcoholism, he's destroyed not only his career, but every meaningful relationship in his life. When Sipowitz's 18-year-old son appears, a few episodes into the season, he asks his father, "Where are you hiding your bottles now, Dad?" Detective Kelly, meanwhile, is more of the rock of the precinct. He's the guy everyone brings their problems to, and quickly becomes the mentor to the squad's youngest detective. Every cast member of the show stopping Kelly in the hall and asking him to help out with a problem was parodied by Mad Magazine during the first season. There's one episode this year that has Kelly being pulled aside twice by two separate people before he can even walk up the stairs to his desk. Kelly does have some inner turmoil. He's reluctantly going along with the divorce, even though he still loves his wife, and his new girlfriend has secret mob ties. But it doesn't have the impact of watching Sipowitz piece his life back together over the course of the first season. Caruso made his displeasure known, vocally, throughout Blue's first season. His tantrums became labeled by Bochco as the Caruso Hour, meaning the crew lost an hour of shooting a day because Caruso would find something in the script to pick a fight over. There's an oblique reference to the Caruso Hour years later in the show's 6th season. Dennis Franz apparently decided to deal with Caruso by simply ignoring him, which is likely an explanation for why the duo actually don't share that many scenes. We're told that these guys have been partners for 6 years, that Sipowitz raised Kelly and taught him what he knows, and their scenes together do convincingly portray a genuine friendship. Yet many of the cases they work this year are worked separately, and any time the viewer is led to believe the two detectives are about to go out for dinner together, another character will pop in and introduce a new situation that derails their plans. Even Sipowitz's attempts at sobriety, the heart of this season, are barely addressed in his scenes with Detective Kelly. Kelly asks him once, "How you doing?" with the sobriety thing, and that's the end of it as far as Kelly seems to be concerned. Franz's portrayal of Sipowitz was so beloved by critics that it became something of a cliché in the 90s. Not Franz's portrayal, the adulation he received in the press. Jay Leno once joked that giving out Emmy nominations was pointless since everyone knew Franz was going to win anyway. Franz really is that good, though. He was reluctant to star in the show, not wanting to be typecast as a cop. But it's impossible to imagine anyone else ever playing this role. Sipowitz's various flaws, coupled with his devotion to the few people left in his life, and his compassion towards those he views as unfairly victimized, are fully realized by Franz. Franz turned out to be correct about being typecast, retiring from acting after the show finished its run, deciding he'd only return for a truly special role. NYPD Blue is, at its best, a show about flawed people trying to do good within a flawed system. Franz's portrayal of Sipowitz dramatizes that idea in every episode. All of Sipowitz's virtues and failings become real for the audience, and he pulls it off for 12 seasons. Andy Sipowitz character notes. Sipowitz is established in Season 1 as a Vietnam vet, mirroring Dennis Franz in real life. The empathy Sipowitz exhibits towards a paralyzed vet who's been set up to be robbed by a prostitute is an early indication of the range we'll see in this character. Police consultant Bill Clark also served in Vietnam before becoming a police officer. Aspects of Clark's career will be assigned to Sipowitz as the show develops his backstory. Sipowitz always wears short sleeves. The significance of this is unknown, unless it's a simple indication that Sipowitz has no interest in fashion and is determined to wear the same thing each day. Even episodes set during winter feature Sipowitz in short sleeves. Sipowitz's short-sleeve shirts were a subject of a joke on The Simpsons. Marge informs Homer that she doesn't care how Sipowitz dresses, he's going to wear long sleeves. A few months after that episode aired, Dan Castellaneta guest starred on the show as an annoying doorman. The idea of Sipowitz as a dinosaur appears throughout the series. It's verbalized for the first time by a younger detective in Season 3, but the implication goes back to the first season. All of Sipowitz's cop friends are chubby, older white guys who don't seem to fit in with an increasingly diverse police force. A shorthand for Sipowitz as an old-school cop is his gun, a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson Model 36 revolver, which wasn't police issue in the early 90s, but had been grandfathered in for a few cops. Sipowitz's years on the job are a bit of a continuity foul-up. He indicates in Season 3 that he's been a detective for 14 years, and was a uniform officer for another 9 years. The next to last season of the show establishes that his first murder case put the wrong man in jail, and the date given is 1986. For the show's continuity to work, it would have to be closer to 1982. The ultimate bit of NYPD Blue trivia? Andy Sipowitz was supposed to die in the pilot. At least this was how it was written, and explained to Franz. Milch later admitted that this was a fib, concocted to convince Franz to sign on to the series in the first place.